Friends, Christianity rhymes with insanity, and I know it is a logical fallacy of correlation. However, it does rhyme. We're going to get into Numbers 11 today, which is one of the most insane uh, chapters of the Bible. Okay? So let's go. Let's dig into it. It is a story of treachery and deceit. The God of the Bible, aka Yahweh, is a treacherous liar and murderer. Today we're going to look at Numbers 11, a ridiculous mythical story of deceit, betrayal, and murder by the God few Christians seem to know. So let's get into it. So we're going to pick up here in Numbers 11, and it is a story on the 40-year camping trip the Israelites supposedly had to take. Um, we're going to pick it up here in verse 11. Actually, I'm going to get my script back up. I'm sorry. I'm doing this in one take. All right. So Numbers 11 takes place during the Exodus, the 40-year-long desert camping trip that Israel was forced to endure at the hands of an angry God who kills his chosen humans with fire and plagues. So let's pick it up in verse 1 of Numbers 11 from the Bible. Now, when the people complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes, the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled. Then the fire of the Lord burned against them and consumed some of the outlying parts of the camp. But people cried out to Moses, and Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire abated. So that place was called blah, 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 because the fire of the Lord burned against them. Verse 4. Here's where it gets ultra stupid. The camp followers with them had a strong craving, and the Israelites also wept again and said, "If only we had meat to eat. We remembered the fish we used to eat in Egypt for nothing," right? When's the last time you went to the market and got fish for free? Right? The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our strength is dried up. So apparently they're not getting fed appropriately. And there is nothing at all but this manna to look at. In other words, they think this manna is worthless. So a few things so far. Looks like they are not eating as they are weak. Also, if I were on a forced camping trip with God and he had just rained fire onto the camp, presumably without an evacuation notice, the last thing I would be doing is complaining and literally crying out loud about the effing food. This story gets stupid right here, and it gets worse as we go. We're going to pick it up in verse 10. Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families and at the entrances of their tents. So, we just had fire rain on us, but we're complaining about the food. Right. Then the Lord became very angry, and Moses was displeased. So Moses said to the Lord, "Why have you treated your servant so badly? Why have I not found favor in your sight, that you laid the burden of all this people on me? Did I conceive all this people? Did I give birth to them, that you should say to me, 'Carry them in your bosom as a wet nurse carries a nursing child, to the land that you promised on the oath of their ancestors?'" Ooh! See how he gets to whine and complain? "Where am I to get meat to give all these people? For they have come weeping to me, saying, 'Give us meat to eat.' I am not able to carry all this people alone, for they are too heavy for me. If this is the way you are going to treat me, then put me to death at once. If I have found favor in your sight, and Do not let me see my misery. Notice Moses gets to complain out loud to God's face. The double standards in biblical text is astounding and by design. None of the story makes sense so far. Verse 16. So the Lord said to Moses, gather for me 70 of the elders, blah, 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 blah. Verse 17, I will come down and speak with you there, and I will take some of the Spirit that is on you and put it on them. And they shall bear the burden of the people among you, so that you will not bear it all by yourself. It's so ridiculous. I mean, what the F does this even mean? I'm going to take some spirit from Moses and put it on the elders so others who already hear the crying and complaining will now also complain to God like Moses did? What? Bear the burden of the people? What does that even mean? They're weak. They have nothing to eat but this garbage that this Yahweh, who doesn't even know biology. We really can't blame him for not being able to provide a nutritious meal, right? Verse 18, and say to the people, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, that you shall eat meat, for you will have wailed in the hearing of the Lord, saying, if only we had meat to eat, surely it was better for us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat to eat, and you shall eat. Spoiler alert, here comes the lie. Right here. You shall eat not only 1 day or 2 days or 5 days or 10 days or 20 days, but for a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have rejected the Lord, who is among you, and have wailed before him, saying, why did we ever leave Egypt? This must be why some parents who catch their kids smoking make them smoke a whole pack of cigarettes, right? And by the way, that is illegal and that will poison your child. Do not ever do anything like that to your child, okay? Let's pick it up in verse 21. But Moses said, the people I am with number 600,000 on foot, and you say, I will give them meat that they may eat for a whole month? Are there enough flocks and herds and to slaughter for them? Are there enough fish in the sea to catch for them? The Lord said to Moses, is the Lord's power limited? Now you shall see whether my word comes true for you or not. I'm going to show you, Moses, is what God is saying. Verse 24, so Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and he gathered 70 of the elders of the people and placed them all around the tent, blah, blah, blah. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to him, took some of the Spirit that was on him and put it on the 70 elders. And when the Spirit rested on them, they prophesied. But they did not do so again, because we all know that when we're starving and we're malnourished, what do we need? We need men to speak for God. Verse 26. 2 men remained in the camp, one named Eldad and the other named Medad, blah, 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 blah. Okay, 27, verse 27. And a young man ran and told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp, and Joshua the son of Nun, the assistant of Moses, one of his chosen men, said, My lord Moses, stop them. But Moses said to them, Are you jealous for my sake? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his spirit on them. And Moses and the elders of Israel returned to the camp. Okay, this is disgusting. Why doesn't God simply pour his spirit out to everyone? Free will is something you'll often hear. One problem with the free will cope in general is that when God pours his spirit on people to work his will, he is in fact violating another person's free will that he is pouring his spirit into. I hear this all the time from believers. Oh, this worked out for me because God wanted it to. Well, the chain of events, the chain of causes to your to your particular circumstance is just humans making decisions. Humans making choices. And apparently, carrying the burden of proof means babbling forgotten prophecy as though it is even remotely helpful for the people. Okay, here's where we really get into it. I hope you made it this far. Verse 31. Then a wind came out from the Lord, and it brought quails from the sea, and let them fall beside the camp, about a day's journey on this side, and a day's journey on the other side, all around the camp, about 2 cubits deep on the ground. So the people worked all day and night, and the next day gathering the quails. The least anyone gathered was 10 homers, and they spread them out for themselves all around the camp. But while the meat was still in their teeth, before it was consumed, the anger of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. So that place was called blah, 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 because there they buried the people who had the craving. It's ridiculous. Let's get into some of this. So God lied when he promised a month of quail. He knew damn good and well he wasn't going to give that to him. And if you have a disagreement about that, you can tell me about how he's not all knowing. Okay? So he lied when he promised a month of quail, and that the Israelites would feast on it until they became sick of it. God knows he had the Israelites work for 2 days straight only to be stricken at dinner time. What good parenting, right? So let's look at some numbers. I've seen quail up close and they're really small birds. It would take several to have a meal for just one person. The area of quail is a day's march in either direction. I took a day's march to be 12.5 miles, so we got a pile of quail 3 feet thick and 25 miles wide. Okay? You can play with that number all you want. Okay? The math is still going to bury you on whether this story is even remotely plausible. Also, I want to point out, in order for the quail to be edible for a month, it would need to be dried and salted immediately. You'd need roughly 7 to 10 metric tons of salt for the pile of quail that is in this pile of quail. Okay? 2 million people cleaning 246 billion birds in 36 hours comes out to nearly 57 birds per person per minute, or about 1 person per second, just to clean them. Someone who really is really good at cleaning birds, it's going to take them 2 to 3 minutes to get through a quail. The actual amount of ground needed for a month of quail is closer to a mile and a half wide. You gotta salt, you gotta dry it, you gotta salt it, right? It needs to be laid out. You don't just salt it and put it into bags and it's good. That's not how it works. It needs to sit out, it needs to dry and cure. So the actual amount of ground needed for a month's worth of quail is closer to 1.5 miles wide. Hardly a day's journey. Feeding 2 million people quail for a month solid would take only about 600 million individual birds, which is close to the number of all known individuals and all known species of quail on the planet today. So did God, and this was right after the flood. We're still re-speciating in this turbo evolution that's needed for the flood to have happened in recent history. Okay? Either way, the feasting by God never happened because he lied. So you can figure out this pile of quail among 2 million people however you want. Okay? The story is ridiculous no matter what you do. If you disagree, leave me a comment. All right? Thanks.